Welcome to the Blessors of Israel podcast. I'm Matthew Dodd, Executive Director of Blessors of Israel. Honored to be in studio today with Pastor Rich Jones. He is the founder and chairman of Blessors of Israel. Pastor Rich, we're in studio today because of what is unfolding in Syria. Who would have thought we would be reading headlines that Damascus has fallen? Netanyahu says Assad's direct defeat is a result of Israeli action. Russia grants Assad and his family asylum in Moscow. They've taken down the Syrian flag at the embassy there. Israel is conducting airstrikes against a security complex. They have also seized ground in Mount Hermon on the Syrian side. They've even told 5 Syrian cities, stay at home. We don't want to harm anyone. Stay at home. We are seeing events unfold rapidly in Syria, which has severe consequences for both Israel and the Middle East. Some in the Jerusalem Post are saying this is the new Middle East.
Yes, that's right. And very concerning. When we look at the new, let's call it the regime that's now taking Syria, let's be cautious because they are no friend of the West. Essentially, it's Al-Qaeda.
Their posturing is such. They're saying, you have no worries here. We're going to get along famously.
Says Al-Qaeda.
But when you look under the hood.
Exactly. Very concerning. Now, the CIA has been trying to overthrow Assad for years, 10, 12 years. And this is an ugly regime. The Assad regime, he's been reigning there for a long time. His father was there. I mean, Syria has been an enemy of Israel really from the beginning. In 1948, when Israel declared themselves to be a nation, Syria was one of those that attacked. Syria was involved in the 1967 Six-Day War. Israel defeated them. They were involved in the 1973 Yom Kippur War and multiple skirmishes since that time. So this Assad regime has been part of and attacking and antagonizing Israel since their birth. So Assad has been no friend of Israel, and efforts have been made to overturn them. But to overturn them, to have Al-Qaeda take over, is very concerning.
But let's take a step back. One of the reasons why Syria has posed such a threat to Israel is because of who has supported Syria.
That's right.
And Iran, this is one of the other pieces to their puzzle, the axis of resistance to come against Israel. So you have Iran, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon, you have Syria. You have that whole northern region, then you have the Houthis, then you have the Palestinians, Hamas in Gaza. And so this was all part of that framework, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, that 7-front war. And all of a sudden now we are seeing within the last 3 months, all of it unravel.
That's right.
Decisively.
And this new regime in Syria is no friend of Iran. So that's important.
Well, in fact, when they were going into the Iranian embassy in Damascus, they were trashing the place. And also, when there were pictures of Assad with Putin, they were trashing them as well. So they were clearly making a statement, again, to the West, trust us, we're going to be your friends now. But if you believe that one, I can show you some waterfront property in the Sahara Desert for sale as well.
You know the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Not necessarily so. We're going to need to watch this very, very carefully. Now, Israel has placed soldiers, tanks on the border.
Actually, they've moved into Syria now.
They have moved into Syria.
They have moved into Syria now. They have taken Mount Hermon, the Syrian side, because that highest strategic point gives them a great advantage.
Very, very strategic to do what they've done. And, of course, they're sending a message very clearly. We will not be involved unless you force our hand to be involved.
We don't want to get into your intramural squabbles here.
But we will.
But if you cross the border,
Yeah.
but they're still making strategic strikes. As you said a moment ago, rightly so, they don't want the chemical weapons to fall into the wrong hands.
That's right.
And become a threat.
So they attacked chemical weapons storage facilities in Syria because they didn't want them to fall into the hands of these we don't know. See, that's the whole thing. We don't know. Yeah. I think they're going to be another Afghanistan, frankly.
I agree with you. And what concerns me as well, now Iran has backed down, and they've said, well, it's good for the Syrian people to determine their future.
Yeah.
Other countries are weighing in the same thing, even Turkey. Now, we talked about this recently during a prophecy update about Turkey. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about Turkey and what they're saying at this point is we applaud the Syrian people and their right to determine their future, but
there you go.
As they rebuild, they cannot do so with the Kurds because Erdogan has labeled the Kurds as public enemy number one. And so that could be, I believe, a foothold, a reason for Erdogan to say, now we're going to stake our claim in Syria to rebuild the Ottoman Empire.
Because this group has had a connection to the Kurds, and therefore Erdogan in Turkey is concerned it could be setting up the next civil war, you might call it, the intramural battles there in Syria, to find out who's going to really be the dominant force there in Syria. And again, I believe it's going to be another Afghanistan. The question is, are they going to self-contain or are they going to be aggressive? Syria has been aggressive. As I mentioned, they fought on 3 wars, besides several skirmishes. They've been aggressive. They've been an enemy of Israel. Will this new regime? Now, so far they're saying no. But what's going to happen?
You know, what's interesting is what led up to this. And Netanyahu has chimed in. President-elect Trump has chimed in as well.
Yes.
Netanyahu said that this is a direct result of what has happened, what Israel has done with taking out Hamas, with decapitating and defanging, declawing Hezbollah, and also striking Iran. You see that diminishing of that axis of resistance, and so that made Syria vulnerable. Then you have President-elect Trump weighing in regards to what Russia's been doing with Ukraine and how that's diminished their forces.
That's right.
And so as a result, when you combine those together, you see how both of these things have orchestrated, plus the economy has orchestrated this event so that Israel has a stronger position after October 7, 2023 than we ever could have imagined. This truly is a new Middle East.
That's right.
In many, many ways. These players are acting differently. Iran is now softening its touch. You know, they were calling the rebel forces terrorists, and now they're talking about them being armed forces.
Right.
They're changing their language. Everyone is changing their language. Russia, they removed their assets out of their port that they've held for decades. Very interesting dynamic here. And what happens next, though volatile and unknown, is something that we have to pay close attention to.
Yes, and I think what will happen is that the nations will try to get a foothold. In other words, the United States, China, Russia is going to now try to negotiate. They're going to try to build some kind of connection. They want to influence, right? Erdogan's already done it.
I agree. I think that part of the posturing you see right now, the soft touch from these other international, is because they don't want to anger the wrong people.
Right.
We don't know how this is all going to shake out. And so when it does shake out, then we can side with people and say, hey, we were for you all along.
And Turkey's already done it. Erdogan has already made it clear. And frankly, he's already been the influence. I mean,
many people believe that had he not given the green light, this wouldn't have taken place.
Exactly. And yet, Erdogan, Turkey, has been siding up to Russia, and Russia has strategically put themselves in Syria. So Turkey's playing both sides here.
I agree. You know, and one of the things to keep in mind is I think Turkey has the 7th strongest army in the world.
Yes.
So when you look at Iran, Persia, diminished. When you look at Russia and their resources diminished, guess who becomes strong now?
Yes.
To a degree.
To a degree, because
they understand their limitations, but
exactly.
Nevertheless, there's a strength that they have that who would have seen even 2 or 3 years ago.
True. Although I would say its strength on paper. I mean, it's never really been seen in the last, 20 years what their strength bearing really is. But their influence clearly is now seen. I mean, this HTS movement, that's really the who we're talking about in Syria, they were backed by Erdogan. The influence is that his fingerprints are all over this.
Yeah. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, that's we're hearing them. They're the ones, Julani, who's really now the figurehead of the organization. He said there is no turning back now.
Right. Well, there isn't.
And there isn't. The regime is toppled after decades of being in rulership. And so now they're moving forward. And you're right. On the one hand, Turkey labeled them a terrorist organization. But on the other hand,
they're backing them.
They're backing them.
Yeah. Well, they're strategically playing both sides of all sides.
They have.
They're NATO. I mean, come on, they're a NATO nation. Yeah. And yet they're essentially partnering with Russia, but then going against Russia and Turkey. They're for HTS. They're not for HTS. They're playing all sides of this. So we need to watch very carefully Turkey. We need to watch very carefully Iran. They're going to try to get their claws in this situation.
Because that was a key pipeline, Syria, for bringing weapons into Lebanon.
Yes, absolutely.
And Hezbollah. Absolutely.
And so that's now going to need to be carefully watched. We're going to watch Russia and their efforts to try to bring their footprint back in, of course, and the CIA is going to do the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
and again, the reason why we're looking at these countries is the impact that they have on Israel. Mm-hmm. And again, the Battle of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39. We've been talking repeatedly about the stage being set for the Battle of Gog and Magog. And one of the things we talked about in a recent podcast and also during a prophecy update was that with this new Middle East, could there be peace temporarily, which would then tie in with Ezekiel 38 and 38 verse 8 in regards that Israel's dwelling securely. And right now, because of Israel's actions in the Middle East, there's a position of strength. You mentioned a moment ago that on paper, Turkey's strong. The same cannot be said for Israel. Everyone knows who Israel is and what they can do, and they've delivered repeatedly. Who would have thought after October 7, 2023, that we'd have Iran weakened, we would have Hezbollah decapitated, Hamas, same, and now Syria.
That's right.
Interesting dynamics, but that changes the fabric of the Middle East and perhaps could open the door for a season of peace.
I agree.
Perhaps.
So we watch very, very carefully. Syria is strategic. You talk about Ezekiel 38 and 39. We know that it will culminate in a great war and that there will be a great army coming from the north. Syria is strategic, which is why Russia has had their fingerprints all over that area. So we watch. What's going to happen now? We have to be very, very diligent. Jesus says, watch, stay on the alert, and pray.
Amen. Amen. Well, there is much more that we're going to be covering when it comes to the developments in Syria as it pertains to Israel. But we do need to be watching and praying, and we encourage you to stay up to date with all that happens in the Middle East by checking out our website, viewing our podcast. Go to our website at www.blessors.org. That's blessors with an ORS.org. There you will see curated news concerning Israel and the Middle East, original articles with the biblical perspective as well. We also invite you to subscribe to this channel, whatever channel you're watching right now, and make sure you like this podcast as well. Encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, now X, and also Getter as well. We appreciate during this strategic time your prayers for Blessors of Israel and also your financial partnership as well. We believe God has called us for such a time as this so the church is informed about the events concerning Israel in the Middle East and how to stand with Israel and pray as well. We stand with Israel because Genesis makes it clear. Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. And so that's where we stand. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. So thank you for joining us today. And we just pray that God will move mightily and bring many to faith in Jesus Christ through all of this turmoil. God is still on the throne. Shalom, shalom.